Welcome to Unit 2, Video 3. In this video, we're going to cover ancient China. So please make sure you're in the section of your notes that start with ancient China. Geographically speaking, ancient China is centered on the Huanghe or Huanghe River, also known as the Yellow River. You can see that here where the arrow is pointed. It is a geographically isolated area. Invaders do threaten China's northern borders, which is going to lead to the creation of something that today is very well known around the world, and that is known as the Great Wall of China. It was built by Qin Shi Huangdi, and it was built to stop northern invaders, and it still stands, most parts of it still stand today. Now, only a section of it was going to be built by Shi Huangdi. It will actually take many different rulers' lifetimes to complete the Great Wall of China to what it is today. So this is not something that would take a small amount of time. In fact, it took hundreds of years to complete it. I actually got the opportunity to visit China a few years ago. So this is me on the Great Wall of China, one of the sections of it, just outside Beijing. And it was fascinating how much this wall was in the mountains. So this was meant for protection. So mountains are already kind of a form of protection, but these weren't as difficult to travel over. And so the Great Wall is going to be more so of a way to protect against invaders. Here you can see how the wall moves up into the mountains. And each of these guard towers here you see on the wall as well. These are going to be locations where soldiers would be posted, and so they would be able to warn of any kind of attack from northern invaders. Today, this is very much a tourist site, and there are many different sections of the wall that are open for people to visit. In ancient China, the major government system was a succession of ruling families called dynasties. We covered this in our last unit. Dynasties are where power is passed down in families. At this point in history, we're talking father to son. In ancient China, rulers were considered to be divine or godlike, but as long as their rule was just, they served under something called the mandate of heaven. Now, the mandate of heaven was the belief that as long as a ruler ruled justly, or they ruled properly, they were fair to everyone, then the gods would be okay with their rule, they would approve of their rule. But however, if a ruler was unjust or did things that were not fair to the people, the gods would disapprove, and their disapproval would lead to the overthrow of the ruler, because the gods, it was believed, would create some kind of natural disaster. And that natural disaster, a flood or an earthquake or something of that sort, that would be a signal to the people that they should overthrow that ruler. So the mandate of heaven was the belief that the gods decided who should rule and who shouldn't, and the people were told that based on natural disasters. A natural disaster meant that that ruler should be overthrown and a new dynasty should begin. So you see, if a ruler is not ruling justly, some kind of natural disaster will occur, and then a new ruler will come to power, or a new dynasty will come to power. That is the mandate of heaven. The Silk Road is going to be very important in ancient China, and actually to the entire known world at the time. This is going to be used for trade and communication between China, or more generally Asia, and empires as far away as Rome. We will see connections with India. We actually saw how Buddhism spread east into China. This is going to be on the Silk Road. And we're going to see a lot of goods traded between China and India, China and Africa even, China and Europe, India and Europe. So the Silk Road is going to be a huge connection between all parts of the world at this time, excluding, of course, North and South America. So this here shows you how the Silk Road traveled. Now, this wasn't a single road. You can see all the red lines indicate different paths that the Silk Road took. You can also see the blue lines on this map indicate the sea routes that the Silk Road took. So the Silk Road was not just a road, it was also sea routes, and it was a lot of different connections. It wasn't just one single way to travel from one side to the other of the known world at the time. China is going to provide these things to the rest of the world via or across the Silk Road. Civil service system, paper, porcelain, and silk are the big ones. And the Silk Road gets its name from the silk that comes from China. Silk and porcelain being traded from China is actually where the creation of the Silk Road came from. Now, there are two dynasties that we'll cover here from China, early years of China history. The Qin dynasty is the first. This is pronounced the Qin dynasty. And the first emperor, the major emperor you need to know from the Qin dynasty is going to be Shi Huangdi. He began his rule at the age of 13, and he was a strong supporter of legalism. Now, legalism is a very harsh belief system, law code, way of living. We're going to talk about legalism in our next video, so you'll learn more about that. He is going to use military power to unite China and to crush dissent. Anyone who believes differently, who tries to speak badly of the emperor, he is going to make sure that they don't have a voice. He will burn books that disagree with what he believes in. So Confucian books are going to be burned because they disagree with legalism. We'll cover Confucianism when we talk about legalism. And he's going to have hundreds of Confucian scholars murdered. Again, because they preach, or I guess they speak about things that are very different from the beliefs of legalism, which is very much a harsh law code, a harsh way of living. In the Qin dynasty, there were several major achievements. Under Shi Huangdi, they created a road network, standardized currency, which means everyone in the Qin dynasty would use the same coin system for trading goods. They also had a standardized language, which was Mandarin. The Great Wall of China, as I said earlier, was started under Shi Huangdi. It will not be finished for a long period of time after him, but it was started under him. And if you take a look up here, these here are terracotta warriors, and he had these constructed during his lifetime, and it was he believed that they would follow him after he died, and they would protect him in the afterlife. So they were actually buried surrounding the area of where he was buried when he died. The Qin dynasty was overthrown after the death of Shi Huangdi. And the other dynasty or empire we'll talk about is the Han dynasty. Now, the Han dynasty will come later, and the Han dynasty is going to rule much longer than the Qin dynasty ruled. They ruled China for more than 200 years. They had a bureaucracy set up for their government, which means that people were basically employed by the government. There was a government system, and there used to be a lot of corruption in who would be in charge in the government. So they set up something called civil service exams. Now, this would require individuals who wanted to work for the government, for the political system, to take a test, to take an exam, to show that they knew about what they were doing. So that one person could not simply have someone involved in the government who was only there because they were someone's friend or someone's brother or they owed someone a favor. Instead, you'd have to prove that you knew what you were doing in order to get into that position. And the Han dynasty was a supporter of Confucianism. Confucianism was largely practiced during the Han dynasty. And again, we will talk about the differences between legalism and Confucianism in our next video. Some achievements and inventions of the Han dynasty include these on the screen: paper, porcelain, silk, and they helped create a longer road network. This is the end of the notes on early Chinese history. In the next video, we will cover the section on Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism.